everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today I want to talk with you about disaster preparedness and go bags. This off, I was not raised with the whole disaster preparedness and go bag mentality. I lived through the '89 quake that shook the Bay Area in California. I've lived through the spring break quake that happened in the early '90s in Oregon. I've lived through ice storms and, windstorms and flooding and snow and everything else, and it was never something I thought about. In fact, it was even after my husband and I got married that I still wasn't thinking about it. I thought it was out of reach. He was raised with disaster preparedness and go bags and food storage his whole life and kept saying, we need to do this and we need to do this, and I felt it was out of reach. We barely lived month by month with our income. Like, little things that I could do to brighten my daughter's day was what was on my focus, not go bags, food storage, because again, I felt like it was so out of reach. Then about, a year and a half ago, I guess it was, maybe a little bit over that, I ended up attending this seminar with my job. It was an online seminar, and it was a day-long event, and I was looking through the classes, the seminars that you could take. In one category, unfortunately, this is probably not the mentality I should have had, but it was, none of them were something I wanted to sit in on. None of the subjects were really interesting to me. So it was, what is the least undesirable one that I'm gonna attend? And I ended up choosing disaster preparedness. Again, felt like this was so out of reach and so not something I could do, but again, I needed to sit in on something, and it seemed like the lesser of all the evils. So I sat in on this seminar, listened to some amazing stories, some amazing experiences, listened to these people who had way more education than myself, my husband who had lived with it all of his life, just well beyond everything like that and what this stuff was going for and how to be prepared. But throughout this seminar, they kept using keywords like, put it in your car, buy this, buy that, talking about expensive things, and all of that stuff could have turned me off. As a visually impaired person, we don't have a car. Many of us don't work. We live paycheck to paycheck, and those paychecks are not big. So instead of putting the blinders on, I said, I got to do something about this. So after the seminar, I ended up emailing the people who put it on, and I said, your seminar was great. I really enjoyed it. I learned a lot. Hearing the experiences was great, but this does not work for a visually impaired person. And I explained why. And they wrote me back and ended up saying, we're working with this group to come up with this list, and, we'd love to have you on our team because you have a very different outlook on this from a visually impaired perspective, and, we just would love to have you part of our team and working with us, on this concept. It is now, by the way, like 2.5 years later, or 1.5 years later, sorry, and I still have yet to see the list they had talked about. But anyway, I've worked with these people for about 1.5 years now and have made so many strides and opened their eyes to what it means to be visually impaired and prepared for a disaster. It is just, it's a whole different thing in regards to that, and I've now done 2 talks on disaster preparedness, one for the National Federation of the Blind of Oregon, and one for the Oral Hull Foundation, which I will link down below. It's a local organization here in Oregon that works with the visually impaired, and also that particular talk was broadcasted at the ACB Newsline or something like that. I'm not part of the ACB, so I don't know the technical term, so I'm sorry about that. Hey everybody, Andrea from the future here. At the time of recording this video, I had no clue what was going to end up happening or perspiring from my presentation that I did with the Oral Hull Foundation, but new news that has just recently come out is that they have actually asked me and the person who I presented with for our presentation to continue. Our presentation was very popular, and I guess the census is that they want more. So we are going to look at doing possibly like an ongoing series, and the newest one that will come out in late March, early April will be on go bags. So it's pretty exciting that we get to share our knowledge and our experiences with other visually impaired individuals and just open the eyes of that this is possible. So I'm super excited about this, and I never thought this would be something I'd be excited about, but education is super important, I think, in everything. So I'm super excited for this new chapter of my life. I have just been able to broaden this whole concept of disaster preparedness on a budget and for the visually impaired. So not long before filming this video, we actually had an emergency here at my home. Not directly impacting us, thankfully, but there was a very good chance it could. And knowing what I knew ahead of time made this such a less stressful situation. I'm not going to get into the situation itself. If you don't follow me on Facebook, make sure you're following me there, because this was briefly talked about and has had a couple posts about our disaster and our possibility of having to evacuate. But what this did is it made me really think about the fact that at that time, Bali did not have a go bag. And I needed to get a go bag for my guide dog. My husband and I have one, although it wasn't super personalized before this. It is now super personalized and has stuff that meets our needs, and so I thought it would be a great opportunity to put in a video specifically talking about my guide dog's go bag, but then piping in a little bit about things that you may not think about that could be in your go bag. Now, I do have the privilege, and I will say it's a privilege because many visually impaired people do not have this privilege, of having a fully sighted husband. So if we were going to evacuate, we would be getting into our car. But I want to try to put this into a broad spectrum of what you can have in your go bag and what might be more of a priority versus not a priority, especially if you're having to carry this go bag on your back. So the first thing I do want to show, although I will not be opening this very large red backpack, this is a pre-made 72-hour kit for 2 people. This was purchased for me. I did not have to purchase this. I will try to link it down below if anybody is interested in this particular go bag. Like I said earlier, I'm not going to be piping in a lot about what's in this bag specifically, but since it was delivered to me, I have personalized it a little bit. I have changed out the superfood that was in it to food that would give my husband and I joy, that we actually enjoy eating, like eating, and we do eat. So I've changed out some of that, and I will go into a little bit more, but another thing we've changed out in this is the first aid kit. We wanted to make sure that this first aid kit met all of our needs, and that includes Bali. So I will talk about my first aid kit that's in this bag a little bit more, but this is very, very heavy, and honestly, I can't imagine carrying this on my back for a long length of time. So in regards to if you have to evacuate and you are a person who is independent, living on their own, and visually impaired, and you need to have this on your back, I would say find the closest place that you can go that can gain you help. Don't be walking long distances with a bag like this. And being that this is for 2 people, you know, if you needed to have only one person but wanted to buy a bag like this and have it in 2 different locations, this could be split and it's a lot lighter, but this is really heavy, and I can't imagine going a mile even with this on my back, and I'm sure I would if there was a disaster. But for one thing, just know these are heavy, and it's not something I would want to carry for a long distance, especially walking with a guide dog or a white cane. So this bag is Bali's Go Bag. I chose not to put it in a backpack because if for some reason I need to evacuate with my Go Bag and my husband's, that is a backpack. And if this was a backpack, there is no way I could put this on my back as well. So I have chosen to put it kind of in a zippered tote bag. This is a lot lighter than my other bag, and this was just a bag that I had hanging around my house, but I have decided to put this in here. This does not contain everything that Bali would need for us to evacuate. The goal would be if I can grab my big Go Bag, I am also going to grab my small one, and I would need both of them. Now, if I could not grab this bag, I'm not sure exactly what I do, but these sit right next to each other, and they have a lot of the items that Bali would need for 3 days. So let's go into this bag and I will show you what we have in it. First thing I have in my bag is a bottle of water. This is just a pre-sealed bottle of water. I'm told that these are good for about 2 years as long as they're not getting a lot of hot and cold. You know, it all depends on the situation and where these are being stored. This is unopened. I did not fill this from my tap. I bought one of these. Yes, I only have one of these, but my Go Bag does contain even more water than that. And like I said, our goal would be to get to a location that has these items available for us. This would not be walking days and days and days, but I want to make sure I have a bottle of water for Bali at all times in this bag. In this bag, I have dog food. I have 3 bags of dog food like this. I put them in Ziploc bags. You can also store dog food in unscented poop bags if you prefer that way. That way it would give you extra poop bags. Make sure they are unscented, but I have packaged up 3 of these bags. Now for my dog, these bags fit 1 day. They're a little bit more than 1 day's worth of food as she sits right now during the winter time, but during the summertime, there are days we could eat this much. And depending on how much we walk and things like that, she could need this much. So honestly, if I had to evacuate, I would rather my dog get a bit more food and to have the pleasure that a lab gets by eating. And this isn't like too much, and 3 days of extra food is not going to pack on her pounds. So I would rather, like I said, have enough food to give her everything she needs than to give her less and to worry that she's going to lose weight. But I do have 3 of these, 1 per day. I have a collapsible dog bowl. I have 2 different sizes of collapsible dog bowls. If you've watched any of my other videos, you might have seen a bigger one. This is a really small one. I don't necessarily like using my really small ones for meals, but I would rather have a bowl of any size that I could use than to not have a bowl at all. I might end up purchasing another set of the big ones, and that way I can have a big bowl in my bag, but for right now we have a small one. I will link this down below in both sizes, but these are great. They go really small, so they can fit in almost like any kind of crevice. This one also has a hole that you can put a carabiner through, so if you need to like clip it to the side of your bag, it works great for that way too. But dog bowl, collapsible dog bowl, because how else is she gonna eat or drink if we don't have one? I'm going to talk about some of the stuff that's in this little bag, but I've chosen to put a lot of the little things in a bag so that I can grab this bag and not be searching through my bag looking for things. This is just a little drawstring bag. I will talk about different things in this with different priorities, but in this bag we have poop bags. I have put 2 rolls of poop bags in this bag. These are unscented poop bags, and I think there's about 15 or 20 per roll, pretty standard. You never can have enough poop bags, I don't think. And you know, you never know when you're going to need something like this, even for your own personal use. These can be used for all different kinds of things, especially if you need something that needs to be more waterproof. A poop bag works great. And dogs stress. When they are stressed out, they can have more issues, digestive issues, you know, from relieving to puking, and you never can have enough poop bags. So these are super small. Why not grab 2? That way I know I have enough, and if any other dog that we may encounter needs a poop bag, I've got them. For us, another high priority item would be an extra gentle leader. The way our house is set up is that the areas we tend to be in the most, our living room, kitchen, and dining room, are on one end of our house, and our back door, our laundry room, is of course on the other side of our house. If we were to have a fire in our kitchen, we would be blocked off from all of Bali's gear. This sits in our bedroom, the other gear sits in our laundry room. So having an extra set of some of her gear is super important. I have this extra gentle leader in this bag so that if we have to evacuate, I may not be able to grab her harness and her other gentle leader, but I have an extra, so I know that we've at least got one piece of her gear with us at all times. Another thing I have is her medications and supplements. I have 3 days worth in here. This is all of her medications and her supplements. I've looked at all of the bottles and found out when I need to replace this bottle, but it is super important to keep them on their medications and on any of the supplements, because Bali right now is on a probiotic, and if she doesn't have a probiotic, we could be having even more digestive issues. So it's super important you have this. This is a bottle that came from the vet's office for one of her prescriptions already, and so I just ended up using it for all of her prescriptions. Now, come the spring, I will be adding in her other medication that she only takes during the spring, so make sure you're keeping this updated with your current dog's needs. Another high priority item for us would be an extra treat bag. This is one that I got in class that I don't use anymore, but Bali is trained on positive reinforcement, and that would definitely need to be continued. And if we, again, have a fire in our kitchen and I can't get to her treat bag, we need to have an extra treat bag in her bag with us so that I can keep the kibble in here and not have to stress. One other thing I do not have in this bag, but it does sit next to the bag, is an extra leash. I do not have an extra leather leash, although that is on my bucket list to get for her. We do have an extra leash, so again, if we have to evacuate out our front door, not our back door, we have a leash to keep her contained, and that is super important to have at any type of evacuation. Alright, so the rest of the gear in this bag specifically, I would say is less priority. If you have room to keep it, I would say go for it. Each dog is going to be different with the rest of this gear, but I think a lot of this is a great thing to have for your dog, the first thing I would highly encourage you to have is some kind of dog bone or dog chew toy. Dogs relieve their stress, a lot of them, by chewing, and having something that they are able to relieve their stress is going to be super important. I learned this not necessarily the hard way, but in a convention where I did not bring a bone. I wish I would have brought a bone. So I wanted to make sure that I brought a bone that has her smell on it, not a brand new one, her smell, so that she can chew it. They're not super big. It doesn't have to be super big depending on your size of your dog. Super important though, I do think, but not high priority like the other stuff. For Bali and I, we also have a very small microfiber towel. This is good for a lot of different things for us personally and for my dog. It's super small, and so it can easily roll up into this bag, and it can almost be put like in a side pocket of a backpack as well. So we do carry this small microfiber towel. It does have a hole so I can clip it to my treat bag if we have the big treat bag, but it does have that. So that I think is super important for paws, mouth, and our hands or anything like that. If you have room and your dog is used to maybe high value or is trained on high value, I really encourage some high value rewards. I've just put a little handful of them in this bag. You know, they're going to be stressed, and having some kind of joy for them as well is going to be super important. I put this in an extra Ziploc so I'm not feeding through bags, but make sure you're watching the date on the dog food and the high value rewards as well. Another thing I have is a bottle of hand sanitizer. You never know when you're going to need this for yourself. You don't know if you're going to have access to water after relieving your dog and going to need some hand sanitizer, but it's, again, super small. I did put this in a baggie, so just in case it leaks, we will not have a leak in our bag and getting it all over food and everything else. Another thing I found that I really wanted to put in here was some kind of blanket or towel. This is actually a very thick, like microfiber towel. It was given to me after I got Bali for her baths, but I personally don't like it. It sits in my cupboard. So I decided to put in her go bag. This would be really soft and thick for the ground when she had to lay on it or in a location. But also if she's wet, we do live in Oregon, this would dry her off. So I kind of did a dual purpose in this towel. But again, this is something if you don't have room for, don't put it in there. It's not going to make or break. You could figure out how to dry off your dog, and I'm sure your dog will sit on anything as long as they're next to you. Another thing I packed in both of these bags is a bag of disinfecting wipes. Now, like before with the poop bags, you never know what your dog is going to show with stress, and you don't know if they're going to end up having massive digestive issues. So having something to clean it up is super important. But then these are good for, you know, like your hands, or if you're in a dirty location and need to wipe something off. This is just a travel size bag. I actually found these buy one get one free, so I actually have a couple different ones of these. They don't have to be super, you know, high priced ones. These happen to be Clorox. But even baby wipes or anything, you're not going to use these on your dogs. These are for cleanup only, but they're super small and super compact. And I can just imagine so many ways of using these if you end up having to evacuate in a disaster. The last couple items I have in this bag are only because I know my dog and because I have the room. Otherwise, I wouldn't have put these in here, but because I have the room, I did. And that is toys. I picked up two very small toys that Bali does play with. This is her little bat toy. It's a very high quality toy, but I know she'll enjoy it. And one of her treat toys. This is a treat dispensing toy. If we're stuck in a room in like a hotel, or we are stuck like anywhere that she is not going to have a lot of time to get out her mental stimulation, a treat toy is the best way for Bali to do this. Put some kibble in her there, let her roll around, and she gets the mental stimulation that she needs in a very stressful time. I would encourage, if you have the space, to do something like this. but you know, every dog is different. Some dogs don't mind treats, some dogs do. You never know what your dog is going to need. And I think the most important thing when coming up with a go bag is you will never have the perfect go bag. You will always be thinking of stuff you need to have in there, but every little bit that can take you closer to being prepared is going to be super important. So the last item I have in Bali's specific go bag is kind of an item that I don't know if I'll ever use, but I would rather have them and not need them than to not have them and need them and they're not super big. This is a set of four paws of the Paws foot coverings. These are like balloons, they're rubber, and they protect their feet from like ice and dirt and things like that. They're not supposed to be used in the heat because they will melt. But Bali has a pair of rough wear boots, but again, if we have a fire and we can't get to her gear, they're all the way on the other side of our house. So I wanted to get a set of these Paws boots. They are disposable. They're relatively inexpensive. I'll link them down below. But I wanted to pick these up. I put them in a little sandwich baggie so we'd have the four of them. Like I said, I don't know if I will ever use them, but if there's ever a chance I need to have them on her feet and we are in an emergency, I would rather have some kind of foot covering on her than to not have any kind of foot covering at all. So that is what is in Bali's go bag, and I'm going to go into our go bag and the specific things that have to do with guide dogs and maybe being visually impaired. So in my go bag, I have a lot of different things, some of which I think is pretty important to have in here, but some things that just came with the bag. This does have 72 hours of water for my husband and I in it already. It is in pouches, so it's not like carrying around a ton of bottles of water, although still very heavy. This did come with superfood, and they are bricks of some kind of food product, but we have changed those out to put more food that we would actually enjoy, like protein bars and trail mix and some peanut butter and crackers and some actual like chicken type packets in here, so that at least we'd have food that would agree with our gut and agree with our system and would give us joy. And they aren't super expensive to buy, and we ended up packing this. That means I do have to go through this about every 6 months and take out the food that is going to expire and put in new food. But again, it's food we eat, so it's not like I can't continually do that. The one thing I want to talk about in this is the first aid kit. I've chosen to have a first aid kit in here that meets Bali and my husband and my needs. So a couple things I want to talk about. There's going to be some weird things that people might not think about, but I want you to think about dual purpose items. So the first thing we're going to go to is bandages. Now, we all probably can say we have a bunch of Band-Aids, and that's great. And this is a kit that came with a bunch of Band-Aids and a bunch of gauze. Now, I have had to switch out the Band-Aids in this for different Band-Aids because the Band-Aids that were in here, my husband's actually allergic to. So we switched them out to a higher quality Band-Aid so we know he is good. But can you put a Band-Aid on a guide dog? No. So in here, we have extra gauze. Gauze is going to be super important for bigger cuts than we might not be able to use a Band-Aid on, but also for my guide dog. And if you're going to use gauze, what else are you going to need? You're going to need tape or Coban. This stuff does not have to be expensive. There is Coban brand, wrap. You can buy this, I hear, at like a feed store for quite inexpensive, but Coban is what you're going to be putting on your dog to keep the gauze on. I have a whole roll of gauze of Coban here, but the thing is, Coban's also used for humans. In fact, my husband and I prefer Coban over tape. So we wanted to make sure we customized our first aid kit, again, for Bali and our needs. So gauze, Coban, and our special Band-Aids, which is going to be super important. I did not put any Neosporin. I did not put any, specialized creams or anything like that, because honestly, we are going to be evacuating and getting to a place that we can receive medical attention. And all we need is something to stop the bleeding. For somebody who has eye problems, one of a really important thing I think to have, especially if you use it, is eye wash. These are disposable eye wash little things. These are great for dry eyes or cleaning out your eyes if you happen to get dust in them. I had just actually put these in here. I have had to look at the date to know when these expire, but these are non-preservative, which is recommended by my eye doctor. They're individual, so you're not opening a whole bottle and getting it contaminated with anything. So these are super small, but awesome for anybody, because you never know what kind of environment you're going to be going out into. In this, I do have another bag of those little Clorox wipes, because again, you never know what you're going to be needing to clean up in your first aid kit, and they're small and easy and compact. Now, this might be a little TMI, but as a woman, we know what we need, and you never know what time of the month it's going to be out there. But I want you to think of something extra. Now, I have a bag of these Panty Liners, which are super thin, effective if you happen to need them in a pinch. But also, this does work as gauze. These are absorbent, and you can put the sticky on the outside and they would do a lot more. So, if you're looking for something that is dual purpose and you don't have a lot of room, maybe think Panty Liners instead of gauze. I hope you got some kind of knowledge out of what is in my go bags. These are not perfect. They will probably never be perfect, and I can think of a number of other things that should go in these go bags. Any little bit you can do to be more prepared if you have to evacuate is going to be one less thing you're worried about. So if all you have room is for a day's worth of dog food, a very small to-go kit for first aid, a collapsible water bowl, and a bottle of water to share between you and your dog, go for it. Because you know what? You're going to need to be able to get somewhere, and having that relief that at least you have a day's worth of stuff for you and your dog is going to relieve stress. So don't panic if you can't buy one of these. Don't panic if you can't have a huge go bag for you and your guide dog. Every little bit helps. So make sure you're prepared as much as you can be, and it doesn't have to be expensive. So look around your house, figure out what you have that you can put in your go bag. Make sure you're watching the dates of anything that might expire, but think outside the box and think multi-purpose for each item. So I will see you in the next video. So make sure you're subscribing to our channel, make sure you're hitting the notification button, and make sure you're following us on Facebook at Life as a Guide Dog Team for more updated information.